Welcome to the GoldMind Business Academy, where I help you unlock your potential, build a thriving business, and leave you with a lasting legacy. So, my name is Bennett Santan. I'm your guide in this journey of faith and purpose and success. And I'm super excited to share something with you that I just, I've had it implemented in my business for many, many years, but never really connected with the reason why it's so important. And so I want to share with you something from Proverbs 10:14, and it says, "Wise people store up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction." And that's interesting, right? It says, "Wise people store up knowledge," and see, I'm an IT guy, and one of the tenets with IT is the storage of knowledge. And I'll go back to like the old Novell days or Windows for Work groups, or way back from the very beginning. I was working with PCs, and the storage of data was always the key part of a business, of how do you store it, how you retrieve it. And so as I started to build a business, I noticed that I would have some basic spoken rules, and people would just basically forget. If simple little rules like turn the lights off when you leave the office, and I'd come back and the lights are on, right? Just simple things like that. Just recently, I had a person that he's done proposals for the last 7 years, and just all of a sudden he just forgets how to title them. And so it's not what our tendency as a human is, that we just forget, right? You think about the interaction with God and Moses. God basically said, "Hey, write those 10 commandments down," and he put them in stone. He had to do them twice, in fact. The first ones he broke, he kind of like deleted it, so to speak. And sometimes we'll write things and we'll delete them, and we don't really know how to share that knowledge. But it says a wise man stores up knowledge, and it's just not the storing of knowledge that's important. It's the ability to organize that knowledge and be able to pass it on to the right person, right, at the right time. And that's what I want to share with you. And it says, "But the mouth of the foolish is near destruction." And I will tell you, I get into conversations where it's like, "No, this is how we used to do it. This is how we did it. This is what you said." Sometimes how seems like just because I say the word "sure," I've changed things in my office. It changes I had the unintended consequences as a result of something that I said. And so one of the things I want to share with you is that franchise businesses by far are more successful than any other businesses that are out there. Their success rate is in the single digit. I mean, the failure rate is single digits, where a person who starts out their business, their failure rate is in the double digits. And I have to share this with you, and the reason why there's a difference between a franchise and a regular business is the storing up of knowledge. And so if you go to a Starbucks and you'll see a display for Christmas, you'll see that in this Christmas period that we're in, they'll have a 3-inch binder just how to set that up. And if some of the older folks out there that remember Radio Shack, I used to go to Radio Shack, buy a radio, actually, buy transistors and try to build your own radio. It was run by teenagers, and yet this was a very successful retail operation. Let's say the first in technology, so to speak, right? And you'd go there for cables and all kinds of computer stuff, and it was run by teenagers, and it was basically held together by a standard operating procedure, an SOP. And so, without a well-defined SOP, the business will fall into chaos, because the fact of the matter is that memory is inconsistent, and people will forget. And I know folks that were in the medical records business. They were doctors, and they had to they instructed one of their medical coders to change a letter from an A to a B on this situation. Well, that coder actually changed that code, but for the next year. So the end result was he overbilled the government by like $5 million. And guess what? He did go to a camp. He went to camp, federal camp, and had a little good time there. But was able to recover. But it's simple. It's just simple procedures, right? Simple processes. And so you want to institute, you want to basically create a method to keep your knowledge and to be able to share it. And that's one of the things that I've learned in building a franchise prototype, that the key number one thing is to build a standard operating procedure, but it's just not like something that sits on the shelf. That's not what I'm talking about. Obviously you could put something on the shelf, and I used to work at Amico, and they had a standard operating procedure on the shelves. I would pull it out, and it actually got so detailed that it's like the logo, Amico's logo had a particular number, indigo black, blue. And so of the logo, they had to have that particular blue, and that's how detailed it was. But a lot of times when you have a filing system, a standard operating procedure that's in the corner somewhere, it doesn't help anyone. You want something that's active, and you want something that gets the information at the right time to the right person, and also protects your information and making sure it doesn't get into, you're giving procedures that, people shouldn't have. Why? Because they're just, that's not just their job. And so, so you want to document your process. And I'll share this with you, is the way you document your processes is one, you have to have an idea of where you're going to build, how to break up the business. And I just had a podcast that talked about the pillars of business, 7 pillars of business. And you have to have documentation for each of those pillars. And by far, you could start with the sales pillars and the, fulfilling your promise pillars, and your lead generation, lead conversion, client fulfillment, your production. You could create those pillars first by documenting them, and you strengthen them by the documentation. And so you would document what you call value engine. That's a very good thing. There's a number of books out there. One, it's Get Scalable, a great author that talks about how to build a value engine. I would suggest you guys reading that. Read the E-Myth as well. And so document your value engine. Your value engine is what makes you money. What makes you money? And you want to document that process, and clearly document the process that might be prone to errors. And then 2, that is so important for the organization that it has to be done right. Right? Not everything has to be documented, but just those things that are prone to errors and they are super, super important for the organization. And so so that's the one thing to start with, is where do I start? And I'd start at the value engine. Second, I would then have in mind when you create your SOP, that there's really 3 parts. There's a policy which governs the organization. It's funny how I've made policies on even the time of folks leaving the office. How many hours do you work? And in some reason, I might just change it for a person slightly, and then it applies to the whole company. Everyone starts doing it. It's like those monkeys that they taught them how to wash fruit, and then everyone on the island started washing their fruit before they ate. But the funny part was, an island that wasn't connected started washing their fruit too, which is give you an idea, the psychological one that's involved with working with groups of people here. And so the way to make it easier for folks is really to write down those unspoken rules that you have. You can't get mad at someone that you didn't tell them that you're a rule. That's the first and foremost intended there. So you want to capture institutional knowledge. That's the one thing. So getting back to 3 parts, it's policies, processes, and procedures. So the processes are visual, the processes are high level, and they basically like a playbook. And you start out with your value engine. You know, what's the value engine for the organization, and the procedures are detailed. You don't, in fact, you know what? You don't have to do all of this. I used to pay folks $25 a procedure, and you could pay, you know, a fee of an hour's worth of wage or something for a procedure that they write. And so you wanna have that that there. And so the benefits of having an SOP is, one, you capture institutional knowledge, which you have to do. Every business has institutional knowledge. Let's say, you know, even in a let's say a bakery, they need to know how to create that cup of coffee right? That it could be changed. And we work that. It's funny, we have a procedure on how to make coffee, and we get into, like, someone says, hey, create full cups, but a full cap of full teaspoon or full tablespoon means different to someone else, right? He meant like, hey, just scoop it in and throw it in. That's not very, you know, accurate, right? And we found our coffee wasn't accurate. It was because of the instructions. And that's just a simple process. If you can't make coffee right, you know, how can you, like, you know, help customers if you can't even get your coffee right the morning? You know, so that's a little exercise we do in the office. So to show that. Second, when you have your standard operating procedures, your processes documented, it streamlines training. It streamlines it. And so what we do is we create a position agreement, a position contract, so to speak, and that person writes out what they do daily, weekly, monthly, what they're accountable for. Well, guess what? If they quit, the next person just picks up that agreement, and you just change your names, and then now it's all tied together, all the procedures, the processes. So it's a really great way to handle turnover. Let alone in our system, we have OGT, on the job training, and so when people start out, depending on what area, what team, they start out with maybe 10 on the job training documents that they got to review. The other thing is that when you have a standard operating procedure, this is the number one thing that makes the difference between a business that is scalable, that could scale, or versus one that can't. And so the fact of the matter is, if the owner is in the business, it's actually worth 2 times less than if the owner leaves the business. You know, they're about 2 or 3 times. You know, if the owner leaves the business, leaves operating procedures, the business it's much more valuable if you went to sell it. And so the SOP, that you know, retaining of knowledge has to be in place for the business owner to be successful, you know, to really capture the value that's in that organization. And so one of the things that are happening now is that there's all these small businesses that are either closing their businesses or they're selling their businesses. And what's happening with the next person that takes it to the next level? That next person is creating a standard operating procedure. They're creating these processes that I'm talking about. They're implementing this management system. They're creating you know, a cohesive system of work, a playbook. I'm giving you a lot of terms that they all have, you know, we'll cover many of those and how to implement them. So just capture it at a high level for right now. But you know, when you have a SOP, that's what you sell, right? You're going to sell the name of all your customers. You're going to sell your receivables, but they're going to ask you, where's your standard operating procedure for this business, and how can I run when I'm not here, right? When the main person is not there. It needs to run on its own, and the only way you could do that is by having a storage bank, a knowledge bank, and it can't just be like a dump, right? I mean, you know, hey, sometimes my wife, she loves shoes, and sometimes she puts them in a, you know, plastic one of those containers, and next thing you know, she's pulling those shoes out. I'm like, she got all the shoes there. But it's pretty hard to find that nice Santana one. When does that Santana underneath it, like my last name, you know, which I like. It's sometimes hard to find them. So you got to have a system, right? It's just like a library, right? As you all know, you know what comes before the mansion is the library. So if you're wanting a mansion, you better start building the library. That's basically you're storing up knowledge. And you could, like in my case, you could have alphabetical, you could have whatever, but you have some organization to it. That's hard. I have had my bookcases moved. I'm like, wait a minute, the S was down on the bottom, and now the S is up here, and the A is over here. So yeah, you do definitely, to give you an idea how that translates there. And so one of the things that the operating agreement, SOP, does is that it helps provide clarity in times of crisis, and it helps to really make that value engine really work and run. And one of the things is that you could take every challenge that you have. First of all, you could just say what we say is every frustration is lack of a system, every frustration is lack of a process, every frustration is a lack of having that knowledge stored, right? Storage of knowledge happens through systems, right? So the storage of knowledge, happens through a system, whether you use it in a in a CRM. Like, for instance, this whole number of years ago, they started to do visual with these where you could move one box to another. Before that didn't happen, right? It happened maybe 12 years ago, where you could have process flows and you could move things over and they're trigger action. Well, that's documenting your system. And there's many ways to document it: through a system, through let's say a CRM, or the systems are there to put that together. And so during the crisis, that system is what you're going to lean on. When there's lack of sales, you can go lean on the system. You have a system to capture all your client data. You have letters that when there's a crisis, that's what you're going to go back to. That's what you have, and that's what you're going to leverage, and that's what's going to move the organization forward during an emergency. Let alone the procedures for when there's a breakdown that happens. And we have procedures. We call OFI, opportunity for improvement. We have the CAP process, corrective action team process. And so these are things that you start to document, and your whole team will know. Hey, we're going to do a OFI right now. This is OFI. Open up an OFI, or open up a CAT. This is a CAT issue with the government. So you have those procedures, laid out, and then that way you could you could just say, hey, this is the play we got going. Pull out the procedure. Let's work on this. In fact, the matter is just people they just forget. People forget. So one of the, I want to share with you, kind of one tool that we use. We use a tool called Sweet Process. I was one of the first. I don't get any endorsement here, just to let you know. But we do a package use Sweet Process. There's probably 10 competitors to Sweet Process. Trainial, you could just do a search and, evaluate them on your own needs. But so the key for us using this system was that we were able to have many users, and they were associated to teams. So we have like a lead generation team, lead conversion team. Well, that's different than the marketing team. That's different than the money team or finance team. So they don't have to have the documents with related to marketing, unless it serves their job, right? And like, we have a marketing person. Well, as soon as he came in, we gave him all the marketing documentation. We assigned them to the marketing team that opened up all the procedures, all the processes related to marketing. He could just get, even logins, what to do, blah, blah, blah. He just took off running. And that's what's the benefit of having a system like that. And so you have to identify the key processes. You got to basically detail the steps and categorize it and regular update. And so this software package allows my employees to make a change, and it sends it to me, and then I approve it. And so, or to add a component to this process, because we have to capture, some of your employees will have great ideas, right? We have to capture their knowledge. It's just not a top-down approach. Everybody has knowledge. Everyone has a way to improve things, and that has to be captured. You have to have a way. But you know what? It's easy right now. To do this is easy now. Before, you couldn't do it. Before, I'd have this system on a Novell, Novell Exchange, Microsoft Exchange server, and we had all these rights, and then people got access to this and that. That was a hassle. I had to call, hey, IT guy was charging me like, I didn't even want to get into that, what they were charging me just to come in and just solve this thing. And so now you don't have that. You can just get online, get a trainable, get a sweet process and start building your processes. Just let you know, I have my daughter, she's in culinary school. I said, document those recipes. Document how you put that out. I opened up her name of her business is called Cafe Rocher, and she's documenting those processes. I said, you need to be able to tell someone how to make, what are your best pastries, and not only that they make it like you, but that they make it exactly like you. And so how is that going to happen? How are you going to transfer that knowledge unless you document it? And it's right here. It's like wise people, you got to be wise. You got to be wise and store up that knowledge. If not, you're going to be dealing with some foolish mouths. That's, you know what? And it says bring you near destruction. And I've had that happen. I was like, oh, I forgot. I didn't know that. You hear those stories, right? Right? When there's a big mistake. Oh, I didn't know about that. Wait a minute. You've done it 6 times. Don't remember. It's just, hey, you avoid that conversation, that foolish conversation. And so, number one thing, how do you implement this? Just to give you an idea. So let's start with you documenting your knowledge. You could do it now, even as you start, you could start to diagram the exchange conversation that you have. All right, you sell hot dogs. Okay, I sell hot dogs. Right, that's the example. I offer a hot dog. I give it to the person. What's my process in building that Chicago-style hot dog? Can you imagine? You get that sesame seed bun. You get that like Vienna fresh hot dog. It's boiled, right? It has to be boiled. And then you put that in fresh onions. You put the hot pepper, sweet pepper, or hot pepper on there with a slice of tomatoes. You might put something on there, like, I don't know what they put on there, but that's a Chicago hot dog. You gotta build it in your mind first, and you gotta write it down. And you have to be able to explain that to another person if you want that Chicago hot dog to be famous. And a Chicago hot dog could be famous anywhere around the world. I gotta tell you, it could be famous in a little town in Jauco, Puerto Rico. I've seen Chicago-style hot dogs, and probably Mexico. Everybody likes a Chicago-style hot dog. If you could, that's an idea. Just give you an idea, but you got to document it. You got to have pictures with it. You got to have, this is how it's going to look. This is how it's going to taste. This is how it has to have a crunch, right? If it doesn't have a crunch, you throw those hot dogs out, right? They're not fresh. The bread has to be fresh. It has to be sesame seed. It has to be like baked within the day. So how do you get this to happen? It's just like, I'm going to put it together, just get this stuff, and then, hey, is that a nice hot dog? Yeah, and you can never make it again, right? And so, or you don't document, you go, I told you how to make that hot dog. What are you, stupid? Blah, 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 blah. Goes back and forth. That's what happens. Every day in business happens. And so, first and foremost, the practical steps to start this, to document your knowledge, right, is to, one, conduct a business audit. Look at your processes that occur regularly, especially start with your value engines. What's making you money? And think about your sales, right, and your production process. What makes you money? That's what you got to be documenting first. You flow chart it, boxes, triangles. We're going to have a video on that soon. You document those processes. You make sure there's procedures attached to it. And then you got to select the documentation tool, whatever it is. You could use Gmail. You could use a host of other software packages that are out there that probably I'm not even aware of. If you're welcome to share with me any great ideas. And then you got to train your team. And that's the one thing. You got to train your team, because they have to be part of this. They can't just say it's the boss's manual. It's this or that. This is how you manage a team. This is how you manage it. This is how you get rid of the folks that shouldn't be there, right? This is how because see, once everyone should be happy with a procedure that's defined, because they can be happy with their job. They can know that they did a great job and they follow the procedures. But let's just say after you write it down, the person, you had to talk to them 3 or 4 times. Well, guess what? They either get out of the procedure, rewrite the procedure, or you just tell them, hey, this is not the right fit. And hey, I'm going to, say goodbye and release you to find a better place. And it has to occur in those processes. That's how you know someone who could fit into the process. So closing thoughts. So Proverbs reminds us that wisdom is actually more than knowledge. It's how we prepare and apply that knowledge and how you store it, and particularly how you store it. It's just not about knowledge. It's how you store that knowledge and how you relay that knowledge to other people. And so, reflect on these questions here. Do I have the most important processes in my business documented? And then how can I use that documentation to improve my business today? That's it. What can you do today? A lot of times I do micro changes. I make a little change, and I write it down, and I get agreement, and so that's it's not a major task. It's just a little by little task. And so, remember, the wise store up knowledge, and you're a wise person once you start to store up the knowledge that your organization has. So, hey, I want to thank you for tuning in to the GoldMind Business Academy podcast. And if you found this episode helpful, hey, subscribe to the podcast for more insight. And don't forget to join me on the YouTube channel, Bennett Santana, for additional tools and strategies. And please leave me a comment. Please leave me a question. I'll get back to you. And, click subscribe today to start a thriving business with wisdom and purpose. And so until the next time, just remember, never give up and always build up. So thank you so much.